Hello everyone and welcome back to another review on the channel, and it's been such a long and painful year, but we are finally here. October 30th, The Mandalorian Season 2, Chapter 9 is kicking off today, and I stayed up late for this one, and man, was it well worth that wait. Guys, I loved Season 1 of The Mandalorian. I have a review for every single episode of Season 1. I think I grouped them into groups of 2, but this time we're going to do every single week. We're going to have a review out for every episode of The Mandalorian. And, you know, one of the greatest parts about this series is the fact that it's very episodic in terms of, like, every episode has its own contained story. And yes, there's going to be the very plot-centric multi-episode storylines that you will probably get later on in this season, but this is one of those episodes, like in the middle parts of Season 1, where it's just kind of a contained episode where you have Mandalorian on an adventure on Tatooine, and he has to do all these things. He has to fight this crate dragon beast that is just crazy, and it's just such a great episode. And there's pitfalls to this idea of having super episodic episodes, because sometimes you're going to run into, like, last season's Tatooine episode that was kind of just okay. It wasn't that great in terms of the grand scheme of that entire season, but you know what? Then every once in a while, you're going to get a gem like this one. So this is going to be a spoiler review for Episode 1 of Season 2, Chapter 9 of The Mandalorian. And let's just jump right into this because I just got done. Like, literally, I just got done watching it like 5 seconds ago. I am hyped after this. So we kick off this episode like the majority of the season is probably going to be. It's going to be Mandalorian with the child looking for the child's kind, looking for the Yodas. They're looking for the world of Yodas, which we're going to get hopefully by the end of the season. But that's the journey he's going to be on. And in order to do so, he needs to find other Mandalorians because they possibly will know the way to these other sorcerers that they call Jedi, which obviously we all know Star Wars. We know what that is. But eventually they're going to try to get to Yoda's or Baby Yoda's home planets, wherever that may be. But in order to do so, like I said, he has to find a bunch of different Mandalorians. So he's put on a path. He says that there is one possibly on Tatooine. So he goes there and he finds Timothy Olyphant's character, who is adorning the Boba Fett armor, which was so cool to see. And as soon as he started talking, I was like, that is so Timothy Olyphant. I talked about him in my Scream 2 review that I released a couple days ago. And like I said in that review, I love Timothy Olyphant as an actor. Every time he pops up in any role, he absolutely kills it. Like in Scream 2, he was great in that. He was great in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And he's great in this show as well. And I know there's some either storyline in a comic or a book where, you know, you have Boba Fett getting out of the Sarlacc pits and then he ditches the armor and he goes off on his own adventures. And the person who picks up that Boba Fett armor then takes on the mantle of Boba Fett. And I'm not sure if the character name is the same, but Timothy Olyphant is playing that character. And he basically went to this town that's been raided by Tusken Raiders. It's been, you know, savaged by this Krait's dragon. And he kind of took the armor and he took the role of taking care of this small western town. This has a very western-y feel for this episode. And obviously Mandalorian wants that armor back because he wants to return it to his kind, because, you know, you have the Mandalorian's whole basically religion around this armor, around all these things that he feels like their people have possession over. And so he makes a deal that they're going to go off on adventure to try to kill this Krayt dragon with the help of the Tusken Raiders, and he's going to get that armor back. And so that's just the basic premise of this episode. It's fairly simple. You know, he was put on the path by the main theme of this entire season, which is looking for the Mandalorians, but he ran into this guy, and now he has to go save this town again, which is very reminiscent of episode 4 of the first season. But what I think this episode does so much better is building the stakes, because obviously this town has a history of being raided by the Tusken Raiders, and obviously you've seen Mandalorian in season 1 talk to the Tusken Raiders, which is really cool to see. But now using that ability to communicate with them, to team these two groups together that really don't like each other. There's a lot of tension within these two separate groups because of their history that they had, and that raises the stakes for this so much more than what it was in episode 4, the Bryce Dallas Howard episode in season 1, which I did end up really liking that episode, and it feeling a lot like, you know, it's the small little people fighting against the raiders that are taking over their town, and it's very Star Wars like. And this episode had a very Star Warsy feel of these two separate groups learning how to work together and creating their own sort of army against this giant dragon thing. Which, can we just talk about this Krayt dragon? What? They're so cool. It's just like swimming through the sand dunes, which is incredible. Like, I love the design of this creature. It reminded me of episode 2 of Mandalorian, where he was facing against that like rhino creature, and you can definitely tell they raised the budget on this season because it looked gorgeous. And I have to talk about all the cinematography and the music of this entire episode, because the way that they shoot this thing within that room with the VR pretty much screen that can project the backgrounds with the cameras and have basically make it everything look like it's on location, because it's absolutely gorgeous. The way that they shot this entire show for the first season was so incredible, and they just really refined it, and things look so much better because they have a higher budget, and they can make this crate dragon look so realistic, and it just all looked like it was some huge budget blockbuster movie, and that's what I was worried about when Mandalorian was first announced. I didn't want it to feel like some old TV show. Like, I didn't want to feel like it was a Star Wars TV show. I wanted to feel like it was Star Wars, that it had that grandiose scale that all the Star Wars movies have had. And yes, the scale is much smaller than obviously like the Rise of Skywalker or something like that, or like the Empire Strikes Back, which that poster is amazing. But you really did feel the stakes of this episode, and the way that they took the thing down of teaming up and trying to lure the thing out so they can blow up with the bombs, and that didn't work, and so they had to go fly up with their jetpacks to try to get him distracted, and everything about this episode worked for me. I thought it was really entertaining. The performances were all great by everybody. You get to see Amy Sedaris once again. You're going to see these characters pop up. Timothy Olyphant will hopefully return later this season. I really don't want to wait till next season to see him return for another episode, because I love him as an actor. And they're dynamic between each other, because they had that whole standoff at the beginning of the episode, and then they ended up teaming up together. And maybe he's going to give him the armor back later in the season to help him fight. And that could be really cool. I really want to see this character come back, because I found him really endearing. He was very likable. The way he felt like he needed to protect this town. And that's another thing that you got to find out in his little backstory flashback, was that he found this armor almost directly after the second Death Star fell, which is immediately after the Empire fell, immediately after Boba Fett fell in the Sarlacc pit. So he wasn't in there long. And so you get to see what happened to Tatooine and what happened to the galaxy after this, because things don't just fall back to normal and be all perfectly nice after the fall of the Empire. There's going to be other people that come in and try to take over, which is exactly what happened. And that's why he had to rise up to that role of taking care of this town. And I just thought all of that ties this world together so perfectly. And Jon Favreau, who created the first season, who had the idea for The Mandalorian in the first place, this is the first episode he's directed. And he did a great job. He knows this world. There's so many different elements, like Anakin's pod racer, the part that he used for his for Timothy Olyphant's character's like speeder that he uses in this episode is straight from Anakin's speeder that he had in episode 1, which is really cool to see. And when you go to the Tusken Raiders' little like tent area that they live in, it reminded me exactly like episode 2, which, I mean, you know how I feel about the prequels. I did a review for The Phantom Menace, I believe, not too long ago, like earlier, a couple months ago. And, you know, that movie is not good, but there's so many ideas in the prequels and so many things that they bring back for The Mandalorian, which I love, that you're not just ignoring the prequels like the sequel trilogy did. You're taking everything into account. You're accounting in the prequels, you're counting in the original trilogy, and then you're kind of, hopefully they do try to somewhat build to the sequel trilogy, even though we all know how that went. But I really hope they try to put everything together, and that's why I love this season 1 so much, is because I feel like this is made by people that really understand what Star Wars is, and not only that, but are being, like he said in the gallery short, the documentary short that they did, the series that they did for season 1, which they kind of explained they weren't inspired by Star Wars. They weren't inspired by the things that inspired Star Wars. That's why this has such a Western feel, such a serial, old like comic strip feel that you would get of these independent storylines of a hero going on an adventure. That's why this works so incredibly well. It's because it's based solely off of the things that inspired Star Wars in the first place. And of course, we got to talk about the big reveal at the end of this episode. Temuera Morrison, we heard, was coming back as Boba Fett, or in some role. It wasn't necessarily clarified that it was Boba Fett, but now we know for a fact that it is Boba Fett. He's at the very end of the episode, after you see that beautiful shot of Mando speeding by the twin suns, and it pans up, and you see Temuera Morrison walking in front of the camera and looking like a badass. His costume, everything about him looked like, okay, Boba Fett is still around. He's still hanging out on Tatooine. I guess he never left after, I guess it's only like, what, 5 years after Return of the Jedi, so I guess he hasn't been there for too long, but he ditched the armor exactly like that comic strip said. They're really going for that storyline, so they're taking stuff from the Legends too, which is awesome. I will say one thing though, because at the end of one of the episodes of season 1, when you go to Tatooine and you see, what's her name? She's the actress who voices Mulan, and she was in like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Her character was shot, and you see the boots walk up with everybody was saying that was Boba Fett at the end of that episode, but I guess now you found out that it was not Boba Fett, and it was this other character, Timothy Olyphant's character. So what is that tie? Because we never got to see her. Was he just walking and he found her? Is she still alive? Is there any sort of a connection with that? Are we going to see her again? That necessarily wasn't answered, and I guess it's kind of left in the air because everybody's assuming that that was Boba Fett who found her, but no, it wasn't. It was this Timothy Olyphant's character. It was that guy. So that's one little complaint I have, and also some of the dialogue in this episode. If I'm getting really like criticky about this, some of the dialogue that he has is very expositional. You could have just had a montage of them setting up the trap instead of, Mandalorian explaining every single aspect of the plan to the camera, to the audience, basically saying exactly how things are going to go down. I could have done without some of those dialogue scenes of exposition, but what are you going to do? Star Wars is made for children and really made for all people, so they try to make it as accessible as possible, so I can't complain too much. But that is my review and analysis of episode 1 of season 2 of The Mandalorian, chapter 9. We're going to see what happens the rest of the season. I can't wait to see other returning characters, like I believe possibly Bo-Katan is going to come back from Clone Wars. Possibly, I know Rosario Dawson, I believe, was cast as Ahsoka, so I can't wait to see when she pops up later on in the season. And of course, getting our returning characters of Carl Weathers and other characters within this first season of Mandalorian, and I can't wait to see where this series goes. Also, I think this was the longest episode, so hopefully the rest of the season has longer episodes like this one, because I don't know, I thought it just really, really worked. I love this first episode. What do you guys think? Comment down below what you guys thought of Mandalorian Season 2, Episode 1. I loved it. I can't wait to talk about more Mandalorian. So subscribe to the channel to see more reviews just like this one. I hope to see you all in my next one.